We only design by the conversations that we can and cannot have.
How are you planning your next steps?
Approach design very differently. So how would one kind of navigate that situation?
Hey guys, I'm Junaiza Niazi, author of Navigating Service Design, and joining me is another fellow service designer from the SDD community, Samyukta. And together we're on a mission to uncover how might we design our career journey as a design strategist. And to do so, I'm excited to have another author with me. He has over 3 decades of experience across Europe and Asia Pacific. He has consistently demonstrated his talent for leading and inspiring design teams in various industries. He was the director at Deloitte, leading customer strategy and design. Later, he was heading UI, UX, CX, design excellence at Standard Chartered Bank. And today, he has his own studio, MVDM Designs, where he offers leadership and strategic services. He is Mario van der Meulen, author of Counterintuitivity. Beyond his professional role, Mario is an international speaker. He inspires audiences on topics such as design leadership, innovation, human-centered design, and creativity. Thank you, Mario, for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you both. I'm excited to be here.
When you're looking at young designers today, are you thinking of, when you think of yourself when you were a young designer, has the role of design evolved over time? And where is that journey, and where are we going ahead from here, according to you?
Right. Wow, that's a massive question, right? Unequivocally, design has changed, but the intent and the purpose in why we use design really hasn't. When I graduated, the problem spaces were familiar or are still the same that we face today. What are we improving? What are we communicating? What are we introducing? And typically it's sort of a hybrid of the three, but it comes down to these three key questions, right? And then you can umbrella that with a big so what? And that then needs a strong answer too. We were doing that in the 90s, in the 2000s, in the 2010s, and I do believe we'll keep facing these key questions throughout the career, this generation and the next generation of designers.
Yeah, because even when I was figuring out how do I venture into service design, or which design stream should I further do my master's in or specialize in, it seems like there are newer and newer fields that's evolving over time as the needs increase. And sometimes I feel like the systems and the products that we have created in the past is resulting in more pain points for our customers, which is resulting in more design roles to be created.
Oh yeah. Oh no, this is normal. Here's the good news. Design is never done. It's never done. You inform your decisions with all the data and all the knowledge that you have at that point in time. You need to accept that knowledge is going to improve after you've delivered your design solution. And I use the quotes because I tend to shy away from using the word solutions. It feels too final, as if you've actually cracked something. You don't. And anything you deliver as a design solution is next week's design brief, because new things will emerge, to your point, right? New things will emerge that were unforeseen, didn't work as well, worked really well, and can be expanded on. It's just never done. And that's a good thing.
Yeah, how did you plan your entire journey? Like, was it very conscious on how you became a director of design excellence? How are you planning your next steps? Can you guide us as well? Because I feel like we always hit a roadblock and then we're thinking, what next now?
I did it the same way. I think I hit roadblocks as well, and then you try to figure out. Look, if I can give particular advice, but this is advice that worked really well for me, and that might not work for others. I really had to like sit down and unpack what is it in this profession that I love doing and I get recognized for doing. And there are certain aspects in design that didn't work for me. I tried advertising. I'm not a great advertisement designer or activation or all that. That's not me. I'm more in the problem space, in translating or in bridging every phase of design, whether this is insight generating research, sense making that towards the business, informing those decisions. I'm also not really a designer that sits in the delivery cycles. So endlessly iterating all the profit out of an app. I sound disrespectful, but it's not me. I admire people that do that and that stick with that and that really double down on it. And I admire them because I know it's not me. So that tends to like shift your lens and your perspectives in certain direction, and you build upon there. I was uncovering that there's this huge gap between how an idea is shaped by a designer and how an idea is accepted by a non-designer. And then can I bring both parties a bit closer together? Can I find a language that both understand? Sounds highly academic, but at the same time, I don't think us designers pay enough attention to how we communicate with people. We tend to justify our craft and our discipline and our expertise, and it typically falls on deaf ears because that's not what they need to hear from us. And you're going to have limited success if you just hammer on what your design language or the terms or the methodologies are in the hope that you convince someone who's not really part of that world. That said, I'm not saying shift your language and change it so you speak like a business person. It sits in the middle, or in some cases it's an 80-20 or a 20-80. What I'm getting at is that we don't pay enough attention on how we shape conversations with others, other designers, other discipline experts, other business leaders, right down to our customer. Once we do, we tend to have more impact, or our decisions around ideas tend to be more understood. And the support and endorsement that we can gain from it is a lot more solid and a lot more sustainable than just talking people down until they give in. It's a confusing territory to navigate. You've been brought up as a designer, you've been educated as a designer on the strength of your idea and how you could like defend it and the strength of your craft. And so you go into the business world thinking that that's how you are a designer. And I've done that. I've been that same designer that took on this persona of, if at first you don't succeed, then do it the way I told you, because I'm the designer. I know. It took me until I had a collaboration in the late 2010s. I had a collaboration with a really seasoned veteran architect, actually. His father founded a company. He was a son. He was carrying forth with it. They were putting mixed developments all over the world, like iconic buildings. And I was commissioned to do a project with him. And I approached it the same way. I came in guns blazing. I worked my butt off to have my boards, my vision territory mood boards with actual material samples, and I just, bombarded him with the big idea. And he wasn't having it. He just wanted an exchange of thinking so we could shape it together. And that was that first friction point where I knew I had to do this differently if I was going to deliver this project. I couldn't just force my way through it. And be it that not all of us are forceful personalities. If you just stick with, it's my idea, I'm the designer, you gave this project to me, so therefore I have all the answers, that's force. That's a power stance that you as a designer will refuse if it comes to you. If someone comes to you in the same manner, you object it. You will try to push it away. And yet here we are. I see a lot of designers just stuck in that field of trying to justify themselves. And they're missing the part where the thinking needs to be joined. The thinking needs to be allowed by all of us, even those that in our heads we label as, the stubborn ones, the idiots, the arrogant ones. Even their thinking needs to come out because it shapes where we bring design to. We only design by the conversations that we can and cannot have. That's it.
I think, of what I've seen in this context, a lot of young designers, especially if they have done like masters or like some sort of education, there is a very rigid process that they kind of go through and they learn, and there is an attempt as soon as they get into the industry to kind of replicate the process. But industry and education is like two different worlds as per my experience. Like the way that it functions in industry is so much more different. I think that's where I've seen a lot of struggle of people trying to have an ideal design approach or an ideal way to design, but like the struggle to kind of replicate it and adapt, as you mentioned, right? Like sensing that, co-thinking also is a thing. So learning from the industry and trying to adapt to what it is. And here I feel it gets a little bit even more complex because different types of organizations expect you to design very differently or approach design very differently.
Absolutely.
So how would one kind of navigate that situation?
I'll bring you back to when I graduated. I did that before computers took over the world. So I learned how to be a graphic designer by crafting things with my hands. And so I had a certain way of thinking on how the job had to be done. And then everyone wanted me to do it a different way, which again is one of the scenarios that you just need to accept will happen. It's not an attack on your capabilities. It's not a questioning on your skill level. There's various different reasons why you can have that kind of resistance. I've been asked to do what I thought was a very lean 2-month research program. I've been asked to deliver it in 3 weeks. Now, obviously that can offend me, where I go like, you don't understand what it is that we need to do. I can't do this in 3 weeks. I got 2 staff. We need to go to 5 countries. That's just not going to happen. But there are other reasons why that request was made, and it had nothing to do with design. It was just pure business scenarios. You learn the ABC of how to do this job, so you have a tool belt. But there is no law that says it's A and then B and then C and then D and then E. It can be quite jarring for especially for fresh grads, and especially those that double down in very academic and rigorous studies. It can be jarring that they need to let go of that fixed process and just be a bit more, situational and contextual about it. These are fancy words, but not every project runs the same way. Not every company operates the same way. Not every design challenge is solved or attacked the same way. And that kind of flexibility, is helpful, is needed, because it does bring you into a space where you need to pay attention to picking the right method, having the right conversation. It comes down to that again. And seeing things anew, afresh. I'm always worried that if it's too repetitive, you're in a bias. You're in these blindfolds where you already predict what's going to happen. And there are parts in this discipline where that is very efficient and can be desired. But if you're in that strategic element of design, there's no value in predicting outcomes or predicting problem statements without repeating the same process every time or assuming the same trajectory every time. It's tricky. It's dangerous. I wouldn't recommend it. You become a better designer by just letting go of some of the tools and kind of piecemealing it together as you within the situation, within the context that you operate in. It takes a couple of case studies for designers to become aware of that, right? When they meet a CEO and you show them wireframes and the CEO goes, "That's great, can it be built by next week?" And you're like, "I'm sorry, these are wireframes." Yeah, this. So next week this is up, and then by the end of the month, you're like, for them, that's good enough, right? Which brings to that other point that I typically highlight to designers is that how we rate our decisions, how we see design, how we critique design, that bar is super high. And the people that we work with or that we work for, that bar is completely different. And so I've learned that the hard way as well. I've delivered work where I thought this is 30% of its potential. Now, I'm never going to tell anyone I did this, because anyone that is a designer is going to say, this sucks. This is just plain. Client's super happy. And then they win awards with this. So then you go like, okay, I'm missing something. I'm missing something. Am I pushing too hard? This is you that's in the way of design. You set your platform too high, or you build your expectation too high for the actual need. And if you're in UX, you design on needs, not on the criteria that you yourself hold or want to see happening, because then you design for you.
You've been leading teams, right? So when you have a set of designers and you have a project coming in, when do you say, this is enough, don't overdo it? This is not the expectation for. Would that make your design team feel, not motivated, and they're like, hey, Maru never expects us to do better of ourselves. He wants the most basic things that's required. How do you keep them motivated?
It could go either way. I've been known to ask like a higher fidelity of certain work, but I don't do it so that we look good or that we impress just how pretty we can make things. What comes to mind was we've done a set of wireframes where initially it was all the boxes with the crosses for photo and just the lorem ipsum, but we were going to do user testing with like low to mid digitally savvy people, and I know from experience that is risky. And so we did a black and white higher fidelity with actual headlines, with a first guess at photos, but then made it just black and white. And people were engaging with that because they started to recognize the patterns, whereas we can design. I've done work where we sketched the wireframes as well on a piece of paper and handed it over to development, and that was enough too. So these extremes are situational and contextual, and that's where I'm getting at. it's not your criteria to design, it's the situational criteria to fit. And you'd be surprised how willing a customer or your boss is to go for a lower fidelity to make a quicker decision or to have a first impression, which again then comes to your communication skill to bring him in and open that up for critique. You move forward a lot faster. And so it's this continuum, I guess, that I'm speaking about, where leading design, you need to make a call on how much of that quality, how much is asked at this point in time to move us forward. But it shouldn't be like, how much more impressive can we make this? Especially not if it's an unfinished design or an uninformed decision. Then you're just going to repeat a lot of work and maybe lose your darlings along the way. It's not what you exhibit. Design is not what you exhibit. Design is what you enable.
Right.
And so if you enable that decision making, if you enable moving forward towards outcomes, then you're really doing design. You're doing a bit more of the crafting or the art directing. If your focus is, I want to show off, I want to show my skill here. It's what designers get wrong in their portfolios as well. Again, I know their companies, they look for the magnificently, down to the pixel, perfect portfolios. But then they don't get the type of designer that they may need, unless they're absolutely clear that this is the designer they want, right? 9 times out of 10, though, it's not. It's again a customer or a boss or a leader that is not design based, that thinks that this is the criteria for design. I have hired, and I'll go on record saying that, I've hired designers based on the strength of their sketchbook more than the strength of their portfolio or the look of their portfolio. I've hired those that had a social looking portfolio more around how they talked about their projects, how they were able to distinguish between what is right design versus wrong design, without being overly focused on showing what is beautiful design. Now, I'm a visual designer by background, so don't get me wrong, I like visual design, right? Beautifully crafted design, I love it. But the point for business is they don't pay you for beautiful design, they pay you for business value. Part of that is because your design looks really on brand and really polished and taken care of. Yes, but it also solves problems. And it also solves the problems that customers feel are valuable. Now, if you're in research, you're not paid for the amount of pain points that you uncover. You will be paid for how you leverage what you know of your customer in terms of pain to provide business value for your employer or your client. That's what they pay you for.
This triggers actually 2 questions in my mind. One, going back to a lot of what you said earlier, right? Like, as a designer, where do you place yourself? Like, is it like identifying the problem or more on the execution side? There are a lot of designers who operate, and even companies who hire designers more to operate on the executional aspect of things. So when you are, say, working on the executional aspect and you don't have the opportunity to, there is no research team, so your opportunity to work on the problem side is very limited. So in such times, often it's the non-design leadership who would come up with, this is the criteria for it. And when they come up with the criteria, many times, maybe it's not very obvious what's the user's need or pain point in that entire criteria. It might seem highly as coming from a business requirement or just, market competition or whatever. All that is valid. But when we are designing, say, for the users or users' pain point, how do you kind of align the two? Uh, where something might come completely from a different angle and you are
Yeah,
struggling to design for the user or the customer. So,
yeah. Um, Again, in order not to simplify it, but it is a conversation to have. It is a conversation to have. Now, you could be in a scenario, and I recognize that you could be in a scenario where the company knows you're there to execute, and you're there to execute on decisions. If that's a situation that you cannot change, and you don't feel that your value of a designer fits, you're in the wrong place. You're in the wrong job. So let let me state that first. Your choices then are, yeah, I'm leaving, or I'm having a conversation with at least like one ladder up, that this is my experience here. I'm calling out that I've learned to do this job differently. I've used different elements, or I've been told that different elements are needed. Or another company, we did this and this and this. I tend to have like all my stories like cataloged in my head, right? And with data of X% of customers this, and I have these ready to pull out if and when needed. And I have variants on it where I make them about you and me. Typically, if you remind people that we're all users of digital products, and we all have certain habits in common, and they're not reflected in what you're just about to be asked to do, you can have a conversation, right? Where you go, in Netflix, we do it that way. And that feels a lot smoother. Like, you do that too, right? Yeah. We could do that. Or have we considered using that? And just bounce against that wall. But not become defensive, not become territorial. I am the designer, and I know that because you're fighting fire with fire. They came to you and went, I'm the engineer, you put that button there. Because we've already built it, and now we just need to style it. And you'd be surprised, like in scenarios where we then went, you've built it already. Okay, can you change these parameters in the code so it's in the place where we want it to be, and not where you thought it needed to be? But you've built it, so it's fine. And it's finding these little opportunities, not to fight, but to move forward, and signaling that there's a different conversation with you to be had. If you're in a scenario where there's zero chance for you to have that, and it's what you want as a designer, is what you want to explore, if that is you as a designer, you might not be in the right environment.
But thinking from a different perspective, is it because the environment is wrong, or is it because the word design attached, for example, service designers, with the word design attached to what we do, the expectation from the business is an output or a product versus more of a strategic conversation? So maybe they're thinking that, okay, why are these guys discussing with me about strategy and customer experience? They are supposed to be giving me a digital touchpoint designed so that I can sell it, right? So is it because we have the word design and it has been associated to output driven or executional touch points?
It could be. I tend to avoid using terms like design thinking because it's a bit polarizing. It could be, but you're only ever going to find out by making people aware of that. Like by literally stopping someone and asking, like, hold on, are you asking me this because in your view, being a service designer means I give you a map with emoticons on it and I'm done?
Yeah.
because there's more to it. And for me to really like bring you the value to the business so that you make decisions that are de-risked and that you have clarity on why we made that decision. I need more. I need more visibility here, or we need to have a bigger conversation on that. It's a bit of an exploration you need to do. Again, there's like no black and white formula for it, but it comes down to, have you had any signal that you gave or that you received around the expectations that people have? Do you have the conversations about these expectations so that they are clear? Who does what, with what reservation and what concern? And can you then affirm these so that they're known? And this is actually what I'm bringing into the presentation of this leading design without losing your soul. If you think about it, each of us as an individual, we have certain capabilities. And if I generalize them in design, it's around what you can produce, how you ideate, if you have a very strategic, innovative mind, and how you operationalize what you do. And you have like a spectrum in this, like a particular balance in this. Some of us are really good at ideating, others are really good at producing, not so great at strategic thinking, and they don't want to touch operations. That's who they are. But who do they want to be? Now, I meet countless designers, they're stuck in the producing, but they really want to be the innovative thinker. And so there's already a first gap between who they are today, who they want to be. And then there's the people you work with, and they have a similar projection of you. You are here to do that, but you might have joined to do this. No one has a conversation about that.
Yeah.
And then there's who your company wants you to be. I've hired you so you could do X, and you're sitting there with ambition, like in 5 years, I want to do Y. And maybe the company wants you to do that too, but you've just never had a conversation about it.
So it's a personal battle, is it? It's each service designer or designer who wants to be a part of the strategy conversation. Is it a personal battle where we start with generating awareness and then pushing ourselves into those conversations? Or is there a shortcut where we can join strategy teams or growth teams instead? So
well,
that
it can be both. I've addressed this in different manners. There were clients, for example, where I clashed with because they felt I was off brief. And I felt I was doing my job as a designer. I brought in bigger questions. I shifted the problem the problem framing, and they were very nervous about that. And again, it was if all you do is you stay in your stance, you could see that as opposition, and they're idiots. They don't get designed. They don't let me work. But there's a reason why they were reacting so strongly against my shifts. And keep in mind that they're not there to screw up. I almost said the F word, sorry. They're not there to screw up their job either. And in their mind, they're being the heroes. They're resisting you thinking it's a good thing. And I realized that when I was on another project confronting my client that, my team doesn't like working with you. I struggle working with you. And I had this conversation with these words because he was that direct and that blunt to us. And so I asked him, like, what is it that you expect from us? What do we need to do so that we don't feel like we've gone through a shredder every time we talk to you? I'm tired of this. And guess what his reaction to that was? And this was a very intimidating person, like big voice, cursed you, was rude, and I was ready to fight, right? He kind of deflated and said with great honesty in his voice, like, I'm really sorry, I'm just trying to help. And I had never considered that that could be the scenario. I had all the scenarios in my head, right? He's a jerk. Uh, he's like a narcissist. He's like this, he's like that. And if he says this, I'm saying that. I kept myself up all night preparing for a battle that I didn't need to have, because all I needed to do was assume good intent from that person. And so that helped. And so here I'm in the next scenario, and they blew up on me because, oh, I'm off brief and I didn't feel that way. So after that meeting, I asked for like 20 minutes of their time. And I explained that from my perspective, I was trying to be a really good designer. I understand that this was not welcome, but I really believe in what I'm doing. I really believe that it's necessary for me to ask these different questions and to do this different thinking. What kind of arrangement can we do? And really all it came down to was that I needed to give them a head warning. I needed to give them a bit of time to get ready to shift their thinking, because they couldn't just switch their mind to something else. They were focused here. And so all it required was that, hey, something's coming up. I'm having a very different thought right now. Can I share this? Is this a good time to share it? Or you don't want to hear it? That was our agreement. They never refused me after it. And then they didn't argue after it either. And it wasn't that they changed their mind. It wasn't that we suddenly went, oh my God, we're doing everything wrong. That was their fear. Their fear was, we've made decisions. Now you come up with this. What the hell, man? You should have said that 2 weeks ago. And then I would have made a different decision. And how my mind works is I wasn't even thinking about it. I wasn't asking them to make a different decision. I was just giving them more information.
What is the path for service designers or design strategists, according to your experience or the people that you have seen grow through that role? What does that path look like?
What would happen if you didn't put that categorization on what it is that you do? What would happen if you just see it as, I work in design, I am a designer. So I tackle service design, but also brands, but also product, but also XYZ. You just have a design mindset.
We don't structure it. There could be a difference in expectation from the company. Mm-hmm. But our personal expectation, like you said, that we might think that we would be doing X, but the company might be expecting us to do Y. So wouldn't it be better for us to have the right expectations set based on our designations, titles?
Yeah, but that requires in turn that you know what your expectation is and you know what it is that you want to be doing. And that could take a while, and you might not want to decide too quickly, because our field is very, very broad. I think my difficulty here was that I can't accept that service design has these defined boundaries, because I don't see design as having like, you don't touch this, you go up to here and then you're done. And here too, this could be personal. It's because if you have that design mindset, you just constantly see the world through a design lens. What works, what doesn't, what's the experience of this, what's my visceral reaction to that? Why is this offending me? What kind of emotion am I? You just constantly work with that. Not excluding that service designers could be head of design. Mm-hmm. I'm not excluding that service designers could focus specifically on customer value and be in CX roles, just as they could shift and go specifically into brand value propositions. Service designers could be like high level, low level, and anything in between. And what I mean with that is it could lean very close to process design, even automation. But it could also be in high touch retail environments where you physically meet people. There's contact between people, and it's not invisible behind the curtains, or it's a hybrid of both. And we haven't even brought the entire mixed reality to fruition, and what AR, VR, and whatnot can do. And so, yeah, maybe my reaction was it could be too soon to already see limitations of service design, because we haven't even gone through the full potential or addressed the actual needs for it. That's still evolving, it's still growing, it's still a very new discipline. And I'm sure you'll agree that most of us don't understand, including the people that are doing it. And so we wayfind ourselves in it. That could be bewildering, but if you see that as the part of ambiguity around being innovative and being creative, it could be beautiful.
Yeah. It's a scary space to be in when you don't know how to plan your next steps and your career trajectory. So how did you do it? I think that's where I want to be. I don't know about Samyukta. I want to be better someday. So how do you essentially plan your steps towards that, or skills? Are you picking up certain skill sets to skill you up to the next stage?
Yes. So how did I think the red line in my career, and we spoke about that in our first interaction, for some fortunate reason, how I got my foothold in the discipline was I was in a company that was customer focused day one, and I was very agile before we had a label for it, and so here too, that shaped me in a way that I recognize how to do my practice, and so that is a constant that I look for. But I'm also I'm trying to stay a bit ahead of the curve and kind of recognize where inflection points could come. Fancy words. So what do I mean? There's a certain path that our industry will take, and a corner it will turn because of other things that will influence this category. And when you turn that point, that's an inflection. For example, we're currently in one. The inflection point being AI. AI's been around for a fair amount of time. Huh? We did algorithm design in 2010. But right now it's available for mass, and you don't have to go to specialty firms anymore and whatnot. And so we're at that inflection. We're distracted with what Gen AI can do. Some of us feel threatened about it because I no longer have a job. What we're not realizing is that the next phase of this is that we design for AI. AI is a customer that we design for, or is an agent that acts on behalf of a customer, or an agent that acts on behalf of another AI. And so what is the journey design for that? What is the service blueprint for that? What is the strategic value of doing that for this company? And so if you train yourself to think, 1 year, 2 year, 5 years, 10 years ahead, and there's various different techniques where you could do that. That has helped me. So while I started in customer-centric thinking and customer-centric marketing and design and product and whatnot, the labels didn't exist. But we have massive success with it. And it was my comfort zone. So you keep looking for that. I also felt that in other companies, they either wanted it, so I could go there and bring it to them, or they had elements that I needed to be better at to do that first part far better. For example, branding. Branding and marketing has their own their own language, their own frameworks, their own strategic thinking. What's the hybrid of that with customer centricity, with user centricity? And then what's the hybrid of that with innovation techniques and thinking? And so I was always kind of looking at it that way, and it may not have always been conscious. It is off, or quite often it was opportunistic, where I just had a curiosity to dive into different categories, do different types of project work, but then also look for what can I bring with me from that. If I now pivot, if I now go from branding to innovation, what do I bring with me? Because those transferable skills is what will make you the designer of choice. And it's again those trends. Earlier I was saying, like, I bring these conversations to stakeholders like, hey, when I use that app that you use, this and this and this I like. That's like hinting at you have something transferable to bring in this thinking here as well. But again, this worked for me, right? This was how I shaped it. I've seen people just really rigidly walking a very tight and narrow line and be very successful with that as well. So we each do this a bit different. I think the core message to give here is that there's no race. You might feel that pressure of I should be somewhere else by now. Should you? By now I should have X, Y, really? What is it that you have that you could really celebrate that you have already, or that you are still doing? I tend to remind my designers that you gotta seed that which you want to grow. You can't just put a seed in the ground and go, where's my fruit? It needs to germinate, it needs to root, it needs to grow, it needs to flower, it needs to be pollinated, and then maybe you have fruit. We're so focused on goals and end states, and there really isn't. Like, again, it's not a race, so no one's winning. Everyone's going at this at their pace. But another philosophical statement I make is that you gotta dig the wells before you are thirsty. You gotta do a bit of the work, the dirty work, and then enjoy what you have. So if you want to be really better at a discipline, a practice, a way of thinking, a technique, gotta do the work. And then in combination with what I said earlier, not because now you're that expert and you go, it's me. No, you use it in a different, with a different perspective, a different angle. And you don't have to be experts. You don't have to be experts at everything. I've tried, but there's no point in it. A good way to start is typically, or it has worked for quite a few people, is understanding the basics around system thinking. What's the input and what's the feedback? What's the output of something? And to illustrate that, I know that if I put gas in a car, the noise will be happening at the front because there's the engine, and somehow power is transferred to wheels, and off I go, and I go from A to B. That I won't be able to fix an engine. I don't need to be a mechanic to understand a car. I need to be a mechanic to fix the car, but to understand the concept of a car, I just need to know, the basics of it. And if you bring that to other disciplines, including AI, or even front or back end development, or compliance, or risk and security, all this, if you bring the core, what goes in, what comes out, how is the system influencing other systems? right? The car combustion engine, there's exhaust that has an impact on the environment. The wheels on the road, the wheels get hot. If you understand enough of that, you can join any meeting in any discipline, and you can work cross-functionally. When you can work cross-functionally and multidisciplinary, you are valuable. Whether you're a strategic designer, a product designer, a brand designer, it doesn't matter. If you are able to work horizontal across all the silos in your company, you have a company value that is, you're the last one they want to let go, because everyone needs you.
It's really nice to hear this, because as in India, all our parents have taught us to be big achievers, always running a race. We always, so that's how we've been trained even academically. So that's inbuilt in our systems. So we're always thinking of what's next. What do we do after this? So, but it's really nice to hear your way to look at it and just have patience and evaluate what you're doing right now.
It's good to have a drive. But it shouldn't be at the expense of your soul, right? That's what we're talking about. It shouldn't burn you out. There's a wonderful story that I help to clarify people that it's not the target that matters. It's how you get to hitting targets. We're so focused on there's that one target we need to hit. So there's a legend of a Japanese traditional archery master who was able, and I don't know if you know the Japanese archery that I'm referring to, that the name just escaped me now, but it's these massive, tall, 2.5 meter tall bows that they shoot above their head, and the target is like this, right? And this master was so skilled, he could walk into his dojo blindfolded or in the middle of the night in the pitch black, draw the bow and arrow and hit the target. And that's not because he could see in the dark. He didn't have like superpowers. It was because everything he did in order to hit the target was mastered, was practiced. How he came in, how he walked, how many paces, his stance, his breathing, everything was in the practice of hitting the target. So that hitting that target, reaching that goal was an outcome, not the objective. It was the outcome. So again, if you start to think about your practice that way, that the results are the outcomes of the practice that you do, and you see yourself as a practitioner of design, not like I must, and now this, and now that, just the practice of design, then design is never done. It's how you are, how you want to be, and what the results will come automatically out of that, and will feel much more satisfying and much less forceful. That if you have these strong conditions and these strong expectations around what it is that you should do, have to do, must do.
Yeah,
that's just you. That's just and all respect to yes, our upbringing, that was maybe a little less in Europe, but I see that in everywhere in Asia, the strong pursuit of academics. And if none of that works for you, go be a designer. This is the natural maturity of our discipline, and it will wean itself out. But again, keep that in mind that when we meet these customers or these bosses or we work at these companies, they see us the same way. And it's a human behavior. It just takes a bit of time and diligence and awareness from us to shift that narrative. Not to fight it, but to shift the narrative.